If you're thinking about leaving management consulting, or you're just curious if the grass is actually greener on the other side, I wanted to make this quick little video about all of the things that I learned after I quit my management consulting job. And as a recruiter, I thought it would be also pretty helpful to share my perspective as to what it would take for you to get a job in industry if you wanted to leave management consulting for good. So the very first thing that I learned after I left my management consulting job at Big Four is that staying for promotion actually really doesn't matter that much and really doesn't affect the type of job that you can get or the level that you'll be hired. And the same thing actually goes for staying for your bonuses, because it turns out you can actually negotiate for those in your potential offer from your next employer. Now, I know a lot of people will try and stick it out to get to manager, or if they were promised a promotion to director, they would stick it out thinking that once you get that director or manager job title, you'll then be able to get an even higher level job outside in industry. Unfortunately, this most of the time is not the case. The reason being is because as a recruiter or as another hiring manager at another company, if you were just promoted like yesterday to a manager or director role, it doesn't actually mean that you have been able to provide impact and deliver results at that level at that specific job. So you're probably going to end up getting the exact same job that you would have gotten if you had just left 2 days before your promotion. So if you really are unhappy at your job, I wouldn't let them dangle a promotion in front of you or even a bonus to keep you around longer. Just because if it's not really worth it, you can leave and probably make up the difference in a very short amount of time. Now, another thing that I was told all throughout my recruitment process to get into Big Four and Big Three was that 2 years of consulting work is the equivalent of 1 year in industry. And while this sounds really cool and sexy, unfortunately, the reality of that is just not true. For example, if you started working for your management consulting firm right out of college when you were 22, and let's say you want to leave when you are 32, that would basically mean that you would therefore have the equivalent experience of 20 years of working in industry, which we all know is just not true, because if you were to leave at 32, the odds of you getting an SVP, VP, or CEO title is probably not that high. Rather, what really matters when you are trying to leave is your current title and your existing scope of work, as well as the results and impact you are able to provide at that firm. Now, there are certain exceptions, like some people have made partner by the time that they're 32, but these are very, very small and very rare instances. And most of the time, your transferable experience will pretty much end up being one-to-one. Another surprising thing that I learned once I left my consulting job is that you will actually make a whole lot more money when you move into industry. I can almost guarantee that you'll probably see a significant pay increase from your total compensation once you do leave consulting. I also learned that you need to really break down your pay and think about it from an hourly rate and perspective. Even if on paper a job offer or job salary may be a little bit lower than what you're making now, if the amount of hours that you have to work and the amount of hours that you have to travel are significantly less than what you would be doing in consulting, your hourly rate is actually going to be much, much higher and pay you way more. And the last thing that I want to talk about when we're talking about pay is that when you are choosing your potential next employer, make sure that they actually pay for performance. I know some of us can talk about all of these bonuses that we were given in the end of our performance cycle while we were working in consulting, and they really ended up being quite insulting sometimes, even just peanuts compared to the amount of hours and work that you put in. And so really making sure that your next employer truly does pay for performance, meaning the amount of work that you put in directly translates into your performance review, which then directly translate into a bigger bonus or a significant equity refresh grant. What you want to make sure is that the amount of work that you're putting in is proportional to the amount of money that you will eventually be paid. One of the very frustrating things for me at my firm was that even if I did get a higher rating, the amount of time and effort it would take and the amount of sacrifices I would have to make would only result in an extra $1,000 to $2,000 per year. Another thing that I learned when I quit my consulting job is that you need to subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to be able to get promoted faster, write a good resume, or pass your next interview. And speaking of interviews, I do think my management consulting experience naturally made me much better at answering hypothetical interview questions. Now, these hypothetical interview questions are very similar to case study scenarios, which you probably had to pass in order to just get your consulting job to begin with. And these hypothetical questions are becoming much more popular, especially by the FANG companies. And these are typically the hardest types of questions to answer because they will provide you with a hypothetical scenario or situation or task or problem that you need to solve for them immediately on the fly. And the best way to answer these questions is typically to ask some really important follow-up questions before you start to verbalize your answer or solution. And then, of course, structuring your answer in a very cohesive way where it's very easy to understand and make sure that your entire solution is comprehensive. And this is basically what we would do every single time we got a brand new client or we're working on a brand new project or had to put a proposal together. So that is one thing that I am really grateful for from my consulting experience. Another thing that management consulting taught me is how to learn new skills very quickly, as well as how to break down very complex problems into much simpler solutions or being able to explain it in a much simpler way. Consulting also taught me how to constantly identify new process improvement opportunities, as well as how to work under extreme pressure and stress. Now, the consulting experience that I had also made me pretty good at PowerPoint and Excel. And if you're working with people who maybe don't have a consulting background, they're probably going to designate you as the go-to person to create all of your PowerPoint presentations, which is just something you're going to have to accept. Another aspect of consulting that I really learned to appreciate after I left is that you constantly get to work on new projects, get to work with new managers, team members, and are constantly learning new things about different industries, products, or companies. If you leave consulting and work in industry, you'll probably just be working for the same company unless you switch, and you'll probably be working on a very similar product set, product mix, be solving the same types of problems every single day. Now, one of the other cool things about consulting that I kind of took for granted is that you also get to work with a different manager every single time you're on a new engagement, which can be both good and bad, because if you have a manager that you don't really like or don't get along with, good news is once your engagement is over, you'll get to work with someone else who's hopefully a whole lot better. In industry, once you choose your manager or get your job, they're probably going to be with you the entire time. Now, on the flip side, if you are working with someone who's really great, hopefully you can stick with them and work with them on other engagements after this one is over, and that way you hopefully don't get placed with a really bad manager. Now, of course, on the flip side, you are going to have to probably deal with a lot more work-life balance situations when it comes to consulting as opposed to working in industry, where the hours are typically a little bit better as well as more flexible in terms of when you need to go into the office and when you need to leave. You're typically not at the beg and call of a client anymore, so you are in a little bit more control of your own schedule. And the last thing that I learned after I left management consulting is that you really start to appreciate your time and really value it a whole lot more, especially when you have so much more free time to actually do activities or to hang out with your family and friends. So one of the things that is very interesting that even a lot of the wealthiest people, billionaires in the world, will say that money can never buy you time. And this is something that I feel like rung really true for me once I left consulting, because when I really thought about how much time that I was working and spending time away traveling or living out of a suitcase, it really did make me appreciate all those weekends or vacation trips that I had. And you really will start to understand and appreciate all of the time that you have, and I think you'll start to spend it and look at it a whole lot differently. Now, overall, I am really grateful for the experience that I gained while working in consulting, and I feel like it's made me a really great employee at my next job. I don't think I would trade my experience for anything else, even though there were really long nights and some days where I really didn't enjoy my job. But I do think the grind is worth it, and the skill sets that you gain really do make you successful wherever you choose to be or whatever type of job you choose to get afterwards. So I am really grateful for my time and experience in consulting, but I will say that I think the grass is greener on the other side, especially if you're interested in making a career switch, because then you can really pursue your passions and find your like quote unquote dream job. And I feel like once you are able to do that, you're really not working anymore. It sounds really cliche, but I really do think it's true, especially now that I love my job so much as a recruiter. I've done a total 180 or maybe 360 career switch, but a lot of the skills that I gained have actually helped me be really successful and have set me apart from a lot of my other colleagues who don't have this typical consulting background. Hopefully this video was a little bit helpful, gave you a slightly different perspective on what life would be like after consulting. And please drop a comment down below if you're thinking about leaving or what you learned when you did leave your consulting job at Big 4 or Big 3. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.